Trauma Therapist Podcast Plus listeners can listen to episodes early and ad-free right now. Become a Plus listener by going to Apple Podcasts, searching for the Trauma Therapist Podcast, and signing up today. All right, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to help trauma therapists be their incredible selves, to be human, to be real, not just a clinician. I'm a big believer in who we are is more important than what we know. And this requires cultivating authenticity, genuineness, and vulnerability, and that requires intention. You can learn more about my courses and workshops by going to thetraumatherapistproject.com. That's thetraumatherapistproject.com. Let's get started. All right, so 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the podcast. Very excited to have as my guest today, Allan J. Katz. Allan, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So Allan is a healthy intimacy coach, licensed professional counselor, and certified sex addiction therapist in the Mid-South. He has counseled over 1,000 clients with relationship and intimacy issues, out of control sexual behavior, and trauma. Allan is the co-author of the book Ambushed by Betrayal, the survival guide for betrayed partners on the hero's journey to healthy intimacy. Allan, fascinating topic. I mean, specialization. We'll get to that. Before we do, welcome to the podcast. Share with the listeners where you're from originally and where you are currently.
Well, I was born in Memphis and I'm still in Memphis. So I've been here 72 years.
Whoa.
Yeah.
All right. So look,
I spent 4 years in New York at school, but I've always been here.
Okay. How did you get into this field, this specialization?
Okay, so I was a marketing executive for about 20 years. My parents originally wanted me to be an accountant, and I was an accountant. Then I owned a restaurant, and I sold Yellow Pages, and I didn't feel it was creative enough to be an accountant. So I got into marketing, and I was that's where that coach thing comes in, the loyalty coach. I switched it now to the intimacy coach, but it used to be the loyalty coach, and I would help small businesses with their marketing. And then we sold our business, and I just wasn't feeling like I was getting a lot of self-worth, from doing this. I didn't feel like, I kept comparing myself to other people. This person was more wealthy. This person was more well-known. And I just didn't feel I was making a difference. And so I have a problem. I've had a problem with porn addiction in my past. And so I started going to 12-step groups. And I also started a hotline for Jewish people who were suffering from sex and love addiction. There's a website called guardyoureyes.com, and I started a hotline for them about 12 years ago. And I started the first online groups for them also. And now it's become just a whole a major course, and it's really helped a lot of people. But because I started getting really good results with them, my therapist told me, she says, well, why don't you become a therapist? And I said, well, I'm 58 years old. I can't go back to school now and get a master's degree. That would be ridiculous, But she said, well, you're going to be 60 anyway. You might as well go do it. So that's what I did. I took off 2 years, and my wife was working, so the money wasn't a big issue. Mm-hmm. And went back to school at 58. And
whoa,
got my master's degree, got my license, and I've been practicing. Spent 6 years in an alcohol and drug treatment center, doing groups and individual. And then I've been in private practice for 4 or 5 years now. So that's a long story, but
but that's what this is about. Wow, very impressive. So you, did I hear you correctly? The main impetus for this specialization was your own porn addiction.
correct.
And when we hear porn addiction, I think people think a lot of things. What is it? How does it occur? Why does it happen? I know it happens differently for different people, but talk more about that.
Right. Okay. Well, so like any addiction, somebody can drink one drink and they're fine, right? Or they can gamble a little bit, but once it becomes compulsive and obsessive, then one drink can become 20 drinks, and then you're in bad shape. You're an alcoholic. But with porn addiction, like same thing, you can look for a few minutes and maybe every week or every month. But when it becomes obsessive, where you're spending hours and hours online or talking and chatting with people or videos and things like that, then it becomes obsessive. The pornographers know very well that it's very addictive. And so that's why they have so many varieties of different forms of pornography, different shapes, different sizes, different ethnic things. I don't want to get into all the details, but, so they know how to keep you on there for longer and longer. And the longer you stay on there, you start to develop certain chemicals in your brain where you almost feel numb. And you don't think about eating, you don't think about sleeping, you're in there, you're addicted, and it's very hard to get out of that.
And like with many addictions, and some would say all addictions, there oftentimes is an underlying trauma.
Correct.
Okay. Was that the case with you?
Right. So there was no major trauma, but there was what we call little t trauma, which I'm sure you've heard of. So with little t trauma, I grew up with parents who did not have any self-esteem, and so they couldn't give me any self-esteem. I was constantly yelled at. I became national president at 18 of a youth organization with 18,000 members. And when I called my parents, to tell them that I won the election, it was just like big deal. So I just never got a lot of accolades or, self-worth, self-esteem. And I just grew up very, and people used to come over to me and say, "You look so sad. What's wrong?" And I would say, "Well, nothing. This is just the way I am."
This is me.
This is me. I'm an introvert. What do you want? But really, I was probably depressed, and I look back at some of my pictures, like, in the school yearbooks, in like 7th grade, I'm just sitting there like not smiling. And so I don't know, I don't have it's a little blurry with my younger age, and I think for a lot of people, I wouldn't say when I was growing up that I was addicted to porn. We would look at magazines, Playboy, but it was, you had to go to a convenience store and you feel embarrassed because there was a woman behind the counter. You were asking for a Playboy or whatever, Hustler, something. But, now with the internet, I think a lot of people that were not addicted have become addicted because it's so addictive, just the movement and the color and the sound and all that video together just makes it a lot more intense.
How did you begin to seek out healing for this?
Well, so I was in, where was I? I was in Las Vegas once doing, and when I was in the marketing business, I was doing a trade show.
Are you married at this time?
Oh, yeah. I've been
Okay.
married 51 years to the
Okay.
same person. Um, so I was already going to 12-step groups, but I went to Las Vegas for this trade show, and I wasn't doing really well. I wasn't doing well at all. Like, people weren't buying anything. They weren't coming over to my booth, and I found myself going out to like strip clubs, and that was the main thing. But I realized after that this was crazy. Like, that there's really something wrong, and I have to get some more a higher level of care. Let's put it that way. And so when I went back to my 12-step group, when I got home, I asked someone, "Do you know a CSAT? Do you know someone who really is into this?" Because my therapist before was not certified in sex addiction. So they gave me, they told me about this woman in Memphis who basically saved my life, and she was the one. She was the one that told me that you have to go to I went to a 7-day intensive in Nashville, and I went to all kinds. I went to 2 years of group therapy every Monday morning from 10 to 12. Doing experiential psychodrama, things like that. And that really, I joke around and say that I did more in those 2 years, mental health, than I did in 25 years of talk therapy.
Now,
And so,
if I may, thank you for sharing this, by the way. And I realize, we don't have all the time in the world, and these are difficult questions to synthesize, but can you talk a little bit about why that treatment was so earth-shattering for you? Why was it so helpful? What about it?
okay, so and it's very, very apropos for trauma treatment, also, by the way, since the reason psychodrama is so amazing to me is that instead of telling you what my problem is, I show you what my problem is. Instead of telling you that, dad or mom did this to me, I show you what they did. And so if I'm in a group, for example, and I'm upset with my mother or father, I'm going to have somebody in the group playing mom or dad.
Right.
And I'm going to say what I may not have been able to say to them to their face directly, or they've passed away, and I'm still holding on to grudges. I'm still holding on to resentments. And so after about 2 minutes of doing this, that person who is not your mom or dad starts to feel like your mom and dad. It's hard to explain why that happens, but it becomes very real very quickly. And you're able to literally take the stuff, the trauma that you've been storing in your brain because you haven't been able to say it. It's all of a sudden now it's coming out, and literally it's leaving your body so you can start to heal. And so, or even something as simple as, so we used to do this every Monday morning, but something as simple as, I'm afraid that if people touch me, or I'm afraid of getting too close. And so all the people in the group, you lay down on the floor, and all the people in the group ask you where they can touch you appropriately. And all of a sudden you've got all these people just touching you, and you feel like, just calm again. It just it affects your body. You feel like, like if you were being hugged by 6 people or something. So there's a lot of different ways. And then there's this thing called role reversal, which is, now that I've talked to dad, I'm gonna turn around, and I'm gonna be dad and answer me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So,
We've had a lot of episodes on here about psychodrama. It's
Okay.
really fascinating. Um, wow.
So
So
I was able to find my voice, basically is what it was. I never, I never thought, I was not very assertive at all. And so working on my assertiveness was something that I needed psychodrama for, to be able to have a voice and be able to express myself. And so even as a therapist now, that was one of my original struggles, was to be able to be more assertive in session with a client, telling a client that he's full of it, or that's not right, to do that or something. Um, so that was a real challenge, and I've worked through a lot of that. And what's funny is that about a month ago, I went back to my therapist that I originally was at, uh, just to talk about some, therapy things. And I told her some of these stories, and she said, "Well, that is assertive." So I really was happy that I finally, got there. That I worked on the assertiveness, and
yeah.
I can do it now.
So was that experience before you enrolled in your master's program and got licensed as a counselor?
The group process,
Yeah.
yes, that was
Yeah.
before. Yeah.
Okay. So talk to us about your decision to specifically want to help people regarding sex addiction or porn addiction or so forth.
Okay. It was because it was the first time in my life that I felt a sense of purpose and a sense of, I'm making a difference finally in somebody's life, instead of trying to work on myself. But that gave me just a sense of purpose, and what's really interesting about it is that I always had these negative voices, negative beliefs, irrational beliefs coming in to my own self when I was in marketing, always questioning myself, because it's difficult, because, advertisers expect a certain amount of results, and if you don't give them those results, you're
Right.
you're not there. So now I was getting good results with helping people, and it just made me feel good about myself, and all that negativity just went away.
Wow.
It just not come into my head. I can't explain it, but it's just, am I doing that? So somebody criticizes me, I'll say, okay, well, that's okay. But before I would, I would be upset for a week or two because, one person said they didn't like what I was saying or doing, but now I just kind of chalk it up to, there's other people in the world I can help. So,
What I find so inspiring about you and your story, Allan, is your journey, and it's not too dissimilar from my own. I mean, you excuse me, you went through a lot of different experiences, and it took a lot for you to find a context and a situation where you shined,
yeah.
and that's really, I think a lot of people out there can relate to that, because it's not easy to deal with those voices in our heads, to manage those, and to break free in a sense, and to go back to school at the 50s. I mean, Jesus Christ, I went back to school at 36. I thought I was doing something, but that's amazing. So when you're working with people, and do you have a particular special population, quote unquote, that you like to work with? Do you like to work with men, or
I
so
mostly
forth?
work with men who are
Okay.
sex and love addicts. I do have a few partners that I work with. I do have some. I'm starting to get more females who are just having like relationship issues, and I work a little bit with couples that are going through infidelity or just communication problems, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
And
that's
obviously we've heard some about your background and experience, but what do you feel you bring to the relationship when you're working with these, let's say, men?
well, first of all, I've been there. So when I say I understand, I understand. Okay.
Right.
And
And that counts for a lot, I think,
oh, for
in the
sure.
therapeutic
And
relationship.
I'm
Yeah.
older, and I'm older, and I have a lot more experience and just life
Right.
experience. Because I think a lot about like these younger therapists that are just right out of school, and you're getting a really getting a really complicated case about infidelity, and some counselors will say, well, just divorce the guy, but we know that we can hopefully help them, through experience. And so and I've been that through that with my wife too, where she was very upset with things that I was doing, and we worked through it. And so I can help other clients work through it.
That's amazing. I was going to ask you about that. I mean, that's amazing. I think admirable too that you were able to work through that with your wife. I mean, I'm assuming that for a while she didn't know about this.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And did you have to tell her? Did she find out? What happened there?
Um, I'm trying to remember. I think one day I just told her. She didn't find out, but one day I just told her that, because I had to go to that meeting on a Tuesday night. I had to go to the first SLAA meeting on Tuesday night. I had to tell her where I was going.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I just told her that I had this problem and I needed to explore it and see whether that was something. And in my first meeting, they said, your insides never matched what you saw on the outsides of others. And when I heard that line, I said, this is for me. I've never heard that before, but that's my life, and just from that one sentence, your insides never matched what you saw on the outsides of others. In other words, I'm always comparing myself to somebody outside of me, that they're better, they're wealthier, they're happier, whatever. And that's what it was,
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of us can relate to that. So let's talk about the book, Ambushed by Betrayal, the survival guide for betrayed partners on their hero's journey to healthy intimacy. Talk to us about the book. Who's it for? Why'd you write it? Okay,
so I wrote it with a woman named Michelle Saphir, who's a marriage and family therapist and also a CSAT. And she knew that I'd written some other books, so she asked me to co-write this book with her. And so I gave more of the addict side of this, and she gave more of the partner side. So basically, this book is for partners of sex and love addicts or porn addicts who want to make things right, who want to understand what's happening to them, that this is normal. What's happening to them is normal because they've been betrayed. It's betrayal trauma is what it is. They've been betrayed, and we have a specific process that we work them through to get all the way to forgiveness and then to self-actualization.
So the spouse who's been betrayed has gone through a trauma themselves.
Yeah,
right?
Betrayal. It's a betrayal trauma is what we call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
Okay. So briefly, how do you approach that treatment? What does that look like?
Well, basically, it's a lot of questions, but it's allowing the spouse to write down her feelings, because a lot of us, we intellectualize what we're feeling, but we don't talk about it or we don't write it down. And when you write it down, it becomes very real. And so if you can get out your your own story, or as the betrayed partner, you can get out your feelings and emotions. So we interviewed hundreds of betrayed partners, and we got their quotes, which are a lot of them are in the book. And we found out what they were feeling, and so we crafted questions in the workbook toward dealing with some of those emotions, so that other women would realize, women or men would realize that this is normal for you to feel this way, but then now there's a path to get out of that.
With porn addiction and sex addiction, is it, and I guess, again, I'm sure it's different for a lot of people, but is it mostly about the sex, or is it about something else? Great
question. So it's not about sex. That sounds strange to say, but what it is about power. It's about the need to control. So think about it. If a guy is looking at porn, right, he has the power finally to say, I don't want to look at this one now, I'm going to switch to this video, or I'm going to do something else, or I'm going to pay somebody for sex, online or offline, and I have the power to tell that person what I want them to do, right? Finally, I have the power and control that I did not have growing up, because I was abandoned or neglected, or just never got affirmations from someone else. And so that's what I'm craving. And so now I've got the opportunity to do that. So that's what it's about. It's also about shame, the shame cycle. The addict doesn't know, once they feel shame of acting out, they feel shame and guilt. Mm-hmm. The only way they know to get rid of the shame and guilt is to do it again. And so it becomes a vicious cycle over and over again. So shame is the motivator, or the cycle engine, so to speak.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Allan, again, the book is called Ambushed by Betrayal, the survival guide for betrayed partners on their hero's journey to healthy intimacy. We'll have that linked up here at the show notes page at thetraumatherapistpodcast.com. Allan, how can people learn more about you, perhaps get the book as well? What's the best way?
Well, they can get, my website is AllanJKatz.com. It's AllanJKatz.com.
Okay.
And I also have a section in there on my website called Creative Tools for Therapists. So these are tools that trauma therapists can use to help their clients experientially with exercises. And also, if they ever think about doing an intensive or something, there's a very comprehensive 3-day intensive program that I offer there if they're interested in such a thing.
Okay.
But that's how you can get in touch with me. Do you want me to give the phone number, or is that...
No, I think that's sufficient here. And again, I'll have both those links, your website and the tools, up here at the show notes page. Allan, wow, thank you for just being open and vulnerable and sharing your experience. I mean, this is an intense topic, definitely, but you are one inspiring individual. I appreciate you being on here.
Well, thank you.
All right, man. All right, take care.
All right, thank you.